All right, so if you've been following along, we now have our items sorted in date, last added, and next we want to add a search bar to Todoey. So in the latest version of Todoey, there is actually something that's just called navigation, or I think searchable. I think something. All right, there we go. So marks this view as searchable, which configures display as search field. So what we can do here is in searchable, we're going to have a text, and we're going to call this search text, which I will define in a minute. Prompt and search. All right. So the prompt here means whatever you want to have listed there. So let's just define this variable. So let's go state private variable. We'll call it search text equals. We'll just have it be nothing for now. And then let's see if the preview renders. If not, let's just build it and see what happens. So we've built it, and it looks like this right here, the search bar. And you can start typing into it. Dog, cat, things like that. And hopefully it will do something. Right now it does nothing because nothing's filtered. All right, so let's go ahead and stop this. And I'll see if this ever generates my preview. But if not, we'll go ahead and get started. So what we're trying to accomplish here is basically dynamically changing the fetch request in core data to use a different predicate. So we're going to add a predicate that allows us to filter. Right now we have sort descriptors. We're going to add a predicate so that it filters on a specific text that's put in here, this search text. All right. So again, if you think about it, and I had a lot of help with this from the hackingwithswift.com website, so please check them out. We're going to create a separate view, and we're going to just inject in values into it. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So when we started before, I talked about this data model and making it a class definition. Manual none is when you want to generate the code yourself, or have Xcode generate the code but then manage it yourself. And that's actually what we're going to do, because we want to create a wrapped title so that we can better work with it. So CodeGen will be done now manual none, and then under editor we're actually going to create an NS managed object subclass for data model, for item, and we're going to put it under the data model section for now. Again, directory structure, folders, MVC, things like that. It's kind of preference of you and the organization you work with. I'm not going to get too deep into it right now because everything's different out in the real world. But we're going to go ahead and click on create. And you can see that now it creates this class definition for item, as well as a property. So what we're going to do is make sure this thing runs. So you see it says items ambiguous for this type of lookup in this context. And I believe the reason is because it has already created these two files when it was under class definition, or class, I can't remember, what was the class? Under class definition. And so I think it's getting confused. So one thing you can do is try building it, probably work actually, but it's complaining because the two values are ambiguous. To kind of get rid of that, one thing that does work for me sometimes is cleaning the build folder. So by cleaning the build folder, a clean will be maybe you can, when you regenerate it, it will go ahead and create and pick the right files. All right. So again, we went to product, clean build folder, and then we rebuilt it. And it seems to have eliminated those errors. So what we're going to do here in the extension for item is we're going to create a variable called wrapped title. And this is of type string. And this wrap title will be the title, and if it's nil, we'll just make an unknown item. All right, just like we do elsewhere. And the reason we need this wrap title is it makes it easier to use with SwiftUI. So now the next part of it is to go ahead and create a separate view from our to-do list view. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go down here and we're going to pull everything in this list view out into its own separate view. So let's go ahead and create a new file. And we're going to call it a SwiftUI view next. And I'm going to call it filtered to-do list. All right, so go ahead and create that. And when you create a new SwiftUI view, you always have this hello world. And what we're going to do is we're going to start working with this. Let's see if we can get this preview to load on my computer. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to give it a new property called FetchRequest. So we're going to start here. And we're going to call it at FetchRequest variable fetch request fetched results item. All right, so we're going to start with this. We're just going to pull back the fetch request. We're actually going to go ahead and comment this out for now because as we make changes here, it is going to make this preview not work. So let's comment that out for now. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create an initializer that basically takes a filter, whatever our search text is going to be, type string, and then we're going to create a new copy of the fetch request, so to speak, and we're going to make it a fetch request for item, and we're going to put those sort descriptors in here. So let's just go back to this this piece here. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to put it in here just so we can kind of see the parallels, right? So up here, I created fetch request variable fetch request fetch result item. So basically, it's this whole thing without this sort descriptor piece, right? So if we take out the sort descriptor piece, this is exactly what this line is, except the variable name is a little bit different. Down here, I'm going to put in what the sort descriptors. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this parentheses, and then I'm going to put all of this in here because we're trying to make sure that this works. All right, and then ultimately we're going to add a predicate. Right, so the predicate allows us to filter on these items. So the predicate is going to be a type of NS predicate. And the format we're going to do, and this is based on the app class, title contains CD parentheses at, and then whatever that filter is that we're going to pass in from our to-do list value. All right, so we've initialized it. Next, the last part is to really write the body of this. So in this piece, we're going to pull everything from this list onwards. So let me just see if I can highlight all of this. I think right there looks right. So let me cut that, and the VStack does line up correctly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this right in here. I'm going to just put this right there. So again, what we're doing is we're creating a new view. We're going to pass in some of these items, and then we're going to filter on this title. And that's really, again, we're creating a separate view, we're injecting the data in there, and then we're displaying the view. And it's complaining because item array can't find its scope because we haven't defined it up here because we called it something else, a fetch request. So, maybe to be consistent, I should have made it fetch request, but I wanted to make sure that it was obvious that we were doing something a little bit different and a little bit separate from our other other view. So again, this was our old fetch request variable named item array. So in this one, I'm calling it fetch request. So we're just going to copy that and drop it in there. And then the other thing it's going to complain about is it can't find context and scope. So if you recall over here in context, I called it this managed object context. So let's just pull that all the way over here. And then I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this line. We don't need that anymore because we've kind of pulled that apart. And that should be it. So let's see if we can build this without any errors. And if you do run into problems, a very typical thing to do is just go to, in Xcode, just go to product, clean the build folder, and it should get rid of some of your errors. All right. Let's look at our simulator. So we have no items, which is not right because I thought I added some animals. So if I hit the letter, let's see if I have anything in here. So something is not working right. So let's do some debugging, right? So there's nothing in here. And why is that? So let's go ahead and cancel. And let's add an item. Maybe I didn't have any items. Dog. Maybe I cleaned my build folder so nothing's there. Dog. Doesn't show up, but can I search for it? Dog. I cannot. So there is a little bit of an issue here still. What we're trying to do is we are pulling this environmental variable back. In this to-do view, we do have search text. We prompt it, and then the value of search text becomes in there. But what's the problem here? We never even put in our view. That's why nothing's showing up. All right, this is what happens when coding late at night. All right, so we're going to copy this structured filter view. We're going to drop it in here. And we need to put our filter, which is this search text. All right, so now let's stop it. Let's run it. Let's see what happens. All right, still no items. Why is that? What if I hit D? Oh, well, there is a dog in here. A, S, animal, O. So what's happening here is the filter looks like it's working correctly, but when there's nothing in the search, when it's nil, it's not bringing everything back. And so we can actually take care of this in a pretty easy way. So in our init, we are just basically going to say, if our filter is empty, or sorry, I should say, if the filter is not empty, so if there's actually something in there, we are going to go ahead and use this fetch request. Else, we're going to assume that it is empty, there's nothing in there, and we're just going to remove this predicate part. And so basically what happens here now is filtered, if filter is empty, is not empty, so there's something in there, we're going to actually filter the list. If it is empty, then we're just going to sort it with everything in there. And I could probably do something like, break out the predicate part and break out the sort descriptors part and just then build the fetch request afterwards. But for what I'm doing right now, I think this is good enough. So let's go ahead and run this, see what happens. So now I have my whole list, and I have dog twice in here because I tried to add it last time. But if I type in DOG, it does filter. I can still check it and go ahead and remove it. I can go ahead and delete it. Let's say I want to search for ants. It's over there. Let's look for, because we're doing contains, if I put the letter G, I would imagine tiger and dog will both appear, or all appear. So there you go. That's really it. That's how you filter using kind of Xcode in its filtering the request object and using Xcode's new little searchable piece. One last thing I'm actually going to do is, I know at the beginning of the video I said that I like to name these things what it's called, but now that the list is actually not in here anymore, I'm actually going to name it back to content view, and this is, kind of what I get for not going through the whole course first. Content view dot Swift, and once I rename it, hopefully it will go back and everything will work. So let me just make sure everything is running. So we'll change this back. Content view previews. In here, it's going to call content view as well. All right. Let me clean this up a little bit. Remove kind of the old data controllers that we had in our previous class. Remove this. Get the preview to fire up. And I think we're good to go. So here you go. This is it. This is all it really takes to now filter a to-do list. Going forward, we could probably do something like moving some of these buttons out into their own views. Then I could pull these methods out as well. But for now, let's keep it here, and we'll keep going on with the class, and we'll see where we end up. One nice thing to note is that you can actually sort as well on, this is really in the content preview with the way this is written. So it really does help when you're coding to be able to look at this content view, with this preview, and not necessarily have to build it in the simulator every time. All right, let me know if you have any questions. This is now done. Again, commit early and often, right? So I'm going to say search bar added to Todoey with filter. So Todoey with filter. So we'll commit this, make sure we save it all so that if we make any changes, it's working now. I don't want to break it. Next, I think we make things swipeable. So we'll get into that in the next class. Thanks, everyone.